You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
Training Day is the third feature film directed by Antoine Fuqua, a name with which I was unfamiliar until the summer of 2001 when I heard it 24 times a day during radio commercials. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Directed by Antoine Fuqua. And I don't recall noticing that with any other type of radio ad like that.
Yes, kids. This was in 2001 when the people still listened to the terrestrial radio. R.I.P. K-Rock.
I wonder if it was somehow in his contract that his name had to be mentioned in the ad.
I don't know, but it was really effective. Like, I remembered that name.
Yeah. Had I heard... Yeah, directed by Steven Spielberg, my brain would have just logged it as, oh, this is a movie I'm interested in now.
Right.
But with, directed by Antoine Fuqua, I was like, who? My brain just suddenly went into overdrive. Like, who's Antoine Fuqua? Why don't I know this name? Why is this name so prominent in the ad? Have I missed something? FOMO.
You're right. The film was released on October 5, 2001, and went on to earn a worldwide gross of $104.8 million. Against a $45 million budget. The film stars Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, both of whom received Oscar nominations for their performances. Ethan did not take home the trophy, but Denzel did.
The Oscar goes to Denzel Washington.
Winning his second Oscar in 5 opportunities, and well-deserved.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The bulk of the film is centered around their characters. The rest of the supporting cast have very small roles by comparison, but we see Scott Glenn, who's got a pretty decent chunk of screen time.
Yeah.
There's also Ava Mendes, Tom Berenger, Harris Yulin, Raymond Barry, Cliff Curtis, Raymond Cruz from Breaking Bad. He's made a couple of appearances on The Hero's Journey here. And musicians Macy Gray, Calvin Brodus, and Andre Young also make appearances. Kids, if you're unfamiliar with those last two names, check out Snoop D-O-double-G and Dr. Dre.
They were both really good in this movie.
Fans of the outstanding Bryan Singer film The Usual Suspects may also recognize Peter Green as one of Alonzo's narcotics officers.
Am I thinking of the Peter Green who was also in Pulp Fiction, or am I thinking of a different guy?
Who was he in Pulp Fiction?
One of his crew was Zed in Pulp Fiction, but that may be a different...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, I know that guy from a million things, that's why. This is a training episode, Dan. Show you around, give you a taste of the business, you know? I got 32 episodes on Apple Podcasts, 2 novels on bookstore shelves, another 4 manuscripts in a drawer I can't publish. I'm in a band with 3 other people. That's 3 sets of personalities, 3 sets of problems. You could be number 4 if you act right.
I don't want to be in a band.
But I ain't holding no hands. You understand? I ain't babysitting.
I've been your co-host for 3 years.
You've got this episode and this episode only to show me who and what you're made of. You don't like books and movies? Get off my show and go back to writing a book blog your mom doesn't read. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, this is Training Day. Dan, the hero's journey begins with the ordinary world, or as Joseph Campbell calls it, the world of common day, where we see our hero in his status quo normal life. A young cop, ex-football player, teams up with an older, jaded veteran cop in Los Angeles.
Wait a minute, we already did Point Break.
Oh, right, sorry. Taking this over. Jake Hoyt.
Were you headed that direction too?
Exactly.
Were you about to make a Point Break joke?
Yes.
I ruined it. I'm sorry. I ruined it for you.
No, it's good. Jake Hoyt is a young LAPD patrol cop in the San Fernando Valley north of Los Angeles. He's got a beautiful wife and a new baby, and he's eager to climb the ladder. Couple things about this open. First of all, I just want to say I love this movie, but holy cow is the expo in this movie clunky. Even though Jake is in the room with his wife, she is for some reason looking at a shrine to him. It's a photo of him in his police uniform, and it's surrounded by votive candles. But just in case that wasn't enough of a signal to us that he's a cop, we cut to him literally polishing his police badge. And then his wife literally hands him his police uniform in a dry cleaning bag. Like, trust the audience, dude. We'll get that he's a cop. And then, in my least favorite kind of expo, people tell each other things they already know for the benefit of the audience. Like, everyone's telling you how lucky you are. Don't screw this up. First of all, nice thing to say on, like, his first day. And he says, I know how lucky I am. I aced this assignment, department. Like, they would have had this conversation already and not on the day he's getting up. So that really bothered me. I still love this movie. And I also wanted to say, Fuqua's a good director. He knows how to tell stories visually. So the first shot is the blazing sun coming up. And there's some symmetry later in the movie. But those are the kinds of shots you don't really pay attention to them at the beginning of the movie. But that first shot is a signal, right? This is the sun rising on this guy's day. So that's what I saw. That's what I saw as Ordinary World.
I have nothing to add to that, except that Jake Hoyt's badge number is 376671, and I did all kinds of searching looking for references to that badge number in other movies, and
wow,
I looked into Seven.
Yes,
because you see their badge numbers, and there's just no match. There is another Seven reference,
yes,
or another Seven connection later in the movie, but
that's right. You'll have to listen to the tidbits to get that.
Next segment is the call to adventure, where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of his San Fernando home with his beautiful young wife and new baby daughter. So like in Seven, the call to adventure is a phone call. Hoyt receives a phone call from Detective Alonzo Harris. This is Denzel Washington's character.
Listen, there's a coffee shop at 7th and Whitman. See you there at 10 o'clock. Be in civvies. Comfortable shoes. Got a backup gun? Something pocket size?
No, sir, I don't. I got the department issue Beretta.
Good. Bring it. Cuffs, too.
And then Hoyt tries to thank Alonzo for the opportunity, but Alonzo hangs up. So this is the first clue to Hoyt that this guy is not messing around.
Yeah, that's Alonzo's first power play. Refusal of the call. Confronted with the fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to engage in the adventure. For the most part, Hoyt is all in. He wants to be on this squad. He wants to get promoted, and he's ready to go. But I've tagged one specific moment as the refusal in this movie. But before I say that, I wanted to flag that refusal is less of a moment in this movie and more of an ongoing pulse. Alonzo is constantly pushing Hoyt to go farther and farther, and Hoyt is continually resisting and pushing back. So I did want to flag that because I don't think we've covered a movie where refusal keeps coming up, and I really enjoyed that about this movie. You know what I'm saying?
I do, yes.
The moment of refusal I flagged is that after he gets off the phone with Alonzo, he kind of leans over, takes a deep breath, and says,
I feel like it's the first day of football tryouts. I mean, I wish it was tomorrow already so I'd know whether I made a squad.
The next segment is meeting with the mentor. Joseph Campbell called this the supernatural aid. This is where the hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. This is another segment that I thought is a continuing pulse throughout the film. The entire movie, I mean, even the title, Training Day, this entire movie is a mentor moment, not necessarily positive. This is Alonzo Harris showing Hoyt what not to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I felt that the coffee shop and then the transition into the Monte Carlo, that was the main beginning of the meeting with the mentor moment.
Yeah.
You've got Hoyt trying to be friendly and establish a cooperative relationship with Alonzo, and Alonzo's just shutting him down. He's brash. He's borderline hostile.
It's nice here.
May I read my paper?
I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you.
You know what? I'll get something to eat.
No, hell no, you won't. You that up. I'm trying to read my paper. Please, shut up.
He exudes toxic masculinity when he's talking about, when Hoyt's telling the story about how he and his training officer made a DUI stop. And Alonzo's more interested in the fact that the training officer was female, and he wants to know if Hoyt had sex with her.
Yeah.
And then almost shames him for not.
Tell the truth. You know you tapped that ass. You put her in the back seat. Bam. Code X.
But man, I got a wife.
You got a dick. You do have a dick, don't you?
This is the kind of man Alonzo Harris is. He made me very uncomfortable.
Yes. Ethan Hawke is great at being a stand-in for us, the audience, going, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. Who is this guy?
This is also, I feel, somewhat of a first test as well. Can Hoyt just shut up and listen to the instructions that are being given? And he doesn't. And Alonzo finally has enough and throws the paper down. I thought that was a funny scene, though.
I think the testing and the mentorship are just mixed in this whole movie. There's a long car ride where Alonzo's laying out the rules.
Today's a training day, Officer Hoyt. Show you around, give you a taste of the business, you know? I got 38 cases pending trial, 63 in active investigation, another 250 on the log I can't clear. I supervise 5 officers, that's 5 different personalities, 5 sets of problems. You could be number 6 if you act right. But I ain't holding no hands, you understand? I ain't babysitting. You got today, and today only, to show me who and what you're made of. You don't like narcotics? Get the out of my car, go back to the office, get a nice pussy desk job, you know? Chasing bad checks or something, you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, learn Spanish. Listen to the sound of the streets. The talk about his wife. Hide that love deep inside you, because the maggots out here on the street will find it. They'll use it against you and they'll chew you up. And he says, don't ever wear your wedding ring at work.
Yeah.
All that stuff is mentor.
I also think in that coffee shop scene, Alonzo is kind of testing to see if Hoyt is the kind of pussycat he needs. You know what I mean? He's really making sure Hoyt's a Boy Scout, so he'll play along and be the innocent guy that he needs to pull off this caper.
Right. There's actually a moment that illustrates that. Hoyt says, I don't know what to think. And Alonzo looks at him real quick and says, good. That's the moment where Alonzo says, this guy I can mold into what I need for the day.
Sliding into crossing the threshold. The hero must pass a special barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. Man, I waffled on this one. I thought, getting into the Monte Carlo, that's the beginning of that's where he crosses the threshold. But I think it's this. So Alonzo watches this drug deal go down with one of his informants. And he pulls over the college kids after they buy the drug. Well, pulls over. He swerves and cuts them off. And then after he confiscates the drugs from them in a horrifying intimidation scene where all those college kids pee in their pants.
In their little seafoam green VW Bug.
I mean, it's just, these
guys are way out of their element.
Yes, absolutely. But Alonzo takes out the drugs that he confiscated and says,
to be truly effective, a good narcotics agent must know and love narcotics. In fact, a good narcotics agent should have narcotics in his blood.
What, are you going to smoke that?
Nope, you are.
And he hands the pipe to Hoyt. And again, there's this moment of refusal. I'm not going to smoke this. I'm not going to smoke this. And finally, Denzel pulls over, puts a gun to his head, and said, if we were on the street and you said no to this, you'd be a dead man. And finally, Ethan Hawke takes that pipe and smokes the dope. And I thought about this for a long time. And this is the first time that he's challenged to do something that's totally against his ethics. The drug stop might have been a little bit, but this is where he really crosses the threshold into saying, all right, I'm going to train with you. I'm going to play things your way. And right after that moment, we have another establishing shot and we move visually clearly into Act 2. So for my money, that's crossing the threshold.
Wow. You're into a couple of tests as far as my analysis goes. We're into the road of trials at that point.
Well,
I thought the crossing of the first threshold is when Hoyt tells Alonzo in the car, "I will do anything you want me to do."
Yeah.
I felt that statement was Hoyt committing to this adventure.
I can see that. I think I take into account also not just the words, but the actions and the visual presentation of the director, and that moment where he stops the car is a clear line in the sand.
Yeah, right. If I was a dealer, you'd be dead by now, mother. Turn down on the street, and the chief brings your wife a crisply folded flag. What the is wrong with you? Talking about, you know what? I don't want you in my unit. I don't want you in my division. Get the out my car. Go back to the valley, rookie.
And it's one thing to say I'll do whatever you want, but it's another thing to actually cross the line from being a good Boy Scout beat cop to saying, all right, I'm going to do what it takes to be a narcotics officer. So I struggled with this too. And like we just discussed, the tests are peppered in with the mentor moments, but I really felt that was where he crossed the line into the special world of being a narcotics officer.
I disagree, and that's because is smoking dope part of being a narcotics officer?
Well,
that's the story that Alonzo says, is that you've got to know this stuff. But
there's actually I researched this. There's a police law that says narcotics officers may take narcotics under certain circumstances in order to maintain their cover.
Sure, like if they're posing undercover as a buyer and the dealer wants them to test the stuff. Like Alonzo says, if you refuse them at that moment, they'll know you're a narc and they'll put a bullet in you. But just driving around in a car? They do all kinds of stuff in this movie that you're like, what? Like drinking the beer and drinking whiskey in the middle of the day. You're on shift.
But this is this is really the first line he crosses. So I'd stick to my guns. Also, just for a little extra punch, Alonzo looks right at him and says, "This isn't a test."
But it is. He says it's not, but it is, because nothing Alonzo says is true. He plays Hoyt the entire movie.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I agree, saying I'll do what you want is to me, this is the strongest expression. There are more expressions of crossing the threshold than one in this movie, and I'll give you that saying he'll do what Alonzo wants is, you could interpret that as a crossing the threshold. But for my money, this is where he goes, all right, I'm in.
I felt that was a failed test because he's already in. He's in the car. They've already been driving around. It's an act of desperation. He's about to lose his opportunity. And to hold on to it, he acquiesces to Alonzo's request.
There are, like we discussed, many moments of refusal in this movie. And leading up to this point, it's been all refusal. And this is the first time he acquiesces to do something that's out of his comfort zone. We'll have to agree to disagree.
Okay. Well, that's the end of Act 1 then.
Indeed.
And my coffee is empty.
Unacceptable.
There's a coffee shop on 7th and Whitman. Why don't you meet me there? Since the last episode, opportunities have been had by us to read and watch and play.
Yes.
What have you been up to?
I've gotten quite a bit of entertainment in. Ami's been on a scrapbooking kick, so at night, in the evenings after the kids go to bed, she retreats to her scrapbooking castle, and I've been...
I'm sorry. Stop.
Yeah.
Scrapbooking castle? This needs to be explained.
When the kids came, all of our space became repurposed for family stuff, including her scrapbook area. And so we got her, I think it's called the Scrap Box. It's like the size of a large wardrobe, and it has 2 doors that fold out, and it's like a command center. So it's got, the doors become like files and little places to put your doodads, and then there's drawers for paper and a desk and an LED light built in. It's a pretty amazing command center. So sometimes I call it the scrapbook castle.
Yeah.
So I watched a bunch of movies. As you know, I've been doing Saturday night movie festivals with my kids. We watched Wreck-It Ralph, which was great, and Princess and the Frog, which was not.
Oh.
It's the first movie with African Americans as the lead characters, and they spend most of the movie as frogs. So it's problematic in many ways. In my own time, I finished the Alex Garland series Devs. I rewatched Ex Machina, and I realized that for me it's a 5-star movie. And so I got on an Alex Garland kick, and I watched all of Devs, which is excellent. I highly recommend it. He wrote and directed each episode of an 8-part limited series, and it's extraordinary.
Wow. So if you're an Alex Garland fan, that's a lot of Alex Garland.
Then I watched Annihilation again, which is his most recent feature, and I liked it. It's not the third act is not satisfying to me, but the rest of it is amazing.
Huh.
I watched the David Fincher film Zodiac, which I enjoyed. I thought it was a little slow, but I enjoyed it. And then, since Da 5 Bloods was one of our choices, I decided I was going to have a Spike Lee movie festival. So I watched Da 5 Bloods, and then I watched Malcolm X, both of which I really, really enjoyed. Something turned me off to Spike Lee when I saw Malcolm X for the first time.
Uh-huh.
But then when we both enjoyed Black Klansman last year, I decided, maybe I'll give him another shot. And so I watched Da 5 Bloods and Malcolm X, and I really loved them both. I really got... Spike Lee's an excellent filmmaker. I think sometimes he dives into style that really breaks the fourth wall and takes me out of the story. He does this thing in Malcolm X where he does a full crank around on Denzel Washington's face so the camera turns vertically 360. And then this thing he does where he has the main character float. So he's like moving down the street but clearly not taking any steps. I don't like stuff like that. It beats me over the head with style. But man, he makes me care about the characters, and he knows how to tell a story. So I enjoyed those. How about you, Dan? What did you watch, read, play? Oh, also, I played several hours of Pillars of Eternity, which I hadn't played in a bajillion years. Loved it. Oh, then I listened to The Poet by Michael Connolly. It's book 2 out of 3 books that don't feature Bosch or Renee Ballard. They feature a different protagonist, a journalist named Jack McAvoy. And the 3rd book just came out, so I'm trying to catch up. And I'm listening to them in order, Daniel. In order.
You say that like it's an unusual thing. You're a strange man.
I found Bosch like 30 books in. I couldn't go back to the start. I'm filling in the blanks there.
Would you read Return of the King without reading The Fellowship and The Two Towers?
If there were 30 books before it, I might, if I came into the series that late.
At that point, I think I would probably just not start at all. I'm not going to start in the middle of the series, and I'm certainly not going to go back 30 books to catch up. There's other things to do.
And yet you did. You started at The Black Echo and moved forward.
I did. I
did read Black Echo first, but then I skipped to, because after I met him, I was like, oh, I gotta read the first book, and then I discovered that there were like 30 books. I was like,
Great. Well, that was a lot of stuff you did.
Yeah.
In comparison, I didn't really do a whole lot. I don't feel like I managed my time this month very well. I did watch a new Amazon Prime movie called The Vast of Night, which was released this year. This is directed by Andrew Patterson, with whom I am not familiar. But the film takes place in the 50s in a fictional New Mexico town called Cayuga, which is a reference to Rod Serling's production company, Cayuga Productions.
Huh.
There are heavy references to sci-fi of the 50s, including The Twilight Zone, The Day the Earth Stood Still, products of that nature, where it was not run and gun, flashy, Starship Troopers style science fiction. It's more what you don't know, what you don't see is what makes the story interesting. It's about these two characters played by Sierra McCormick and Jake Horowitz. She plays a high school student who has a night job as a switchboard operator, and he plays a DJ in the town's radio station. The call sign is WOTW, War of the Worlds.
job.
There's another reference to science fiction of that era.
Nice.
And they receive a strange radio signal. And the film is about them trying to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. The other thing I watched, and then I will wrap this up, is I'm about 2/3 of the way through season 2 of Afterlife with Ricky Gervais. This is a Netflix original series.
Oh, yeah.
I talked about season 1 several episodes ago. Season 2 is available now, and it's just a really wonderful show. It's, as a reminder, or for people who have not heard of the show, Ricky Gervais plays a man in a small English town who is trying to continue with life after his wife dies of cancer. Ricky Gervais is, I've only ever known him as a goofy comedian from like The Office.
Right.
So to see him take on this role where he can still be Ricky Gervais, but there are also scenes where he just breaks down and cries, which I've never seen him do before.
Wow.
It's a powerful show. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm finding myself affected by it in very strange and uncomfortable ways.
Wow.
And it's like 6 episodes per season. They're a half an hour.
Oh,
so
wow.
a season
Okay.
is only 3 hours long. So you could really sit and watch a season in one sitting.
Okay, that seems digestible.
It very much is. All right. Well, there were some side quests there.
Oh, boy.
Questing to the side was done by us. All right. Let's move on to Act 2. Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with the road of trials, or as Christopher Vogler calls it, tests, allies, and enemies. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. Proving their worthiness is exactly what Hoyt has to do here.
Oh, yeah.
Allies? Man. Almost none. 0 allies for Hoyt here. This film is chock full with shapeshifters.
Yes.
The entire film. Hoyt, I feel, is the only one who maintains his ground. Even despite his waffling, like you said, he agrees, he acquiesces to smoke what he thinks is marijuana and turns out to be PCP.
Even his wife antagonizes him. Like, cut Hoyt a break, man. She's like, don't mess this up.
Even characters that you would expect to be enemies. And we're talking the gang members.
Yeah. Yes.
The gang members in the jungle. Mm-hmm. The gang members at the end of Act 3, the Hillside Tresses.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced that correctly. These are all enemies in terms of the fact that Hoyt is a police officer.
Yeah.
But they shapeshift.
Yeah, pretty stunning.
So the first 2 tests you already went through in Act 1. The next test I felt was Roger's house.
Yeah.
And there's the Hoyt's high, and Alonzo pours apparently some pretty nice whiskey, some $300 a glass whiskey, as he says.
Yes.
Get some medicine in you. But there's the snail joke.
Yes.
And there's a little mentor energy, I feel like, from Roger when Roger says, you figure out that joke and you'll figure out the streets.
Right.
Did you have a good sense of who or what Roger was? Was he a former narcotics officer who went bad, kind of like Alonzo does? Was he Alonzo before Alonzo was Alonzo?
So there were a couple clues when he's meeting with the 3 wise men, and they say, how are you gonna get the Russians? And he says, I'm gonna cash in an old account. And they say, he says
right.
one from the very beginning. So I got the impression that he was a high-end drug dealer that Alonzo was using as an informant to take down other drug dealers. That's how, it's not explicit, but that's what I picked up.
It seemed to me that was probably it, but there was also, he could have been doing that, but also been a narcotics officer. Like, that's how he got his product.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
I don't know, because he says, Roger says to Alonzo when they're kind of making fun of Hoyt being a fresh daisy rookie, Roger says to Alonzo, you were just like him.
Yeah, maybe so.
When you started. So
maybe he was Alonzo's mentor back in the day?
Yeah, that's kind of the sense I got. But following that, there's the alley rape.
Right.
Hoyt breaks up the rape of a high school girl by two junkies.
Police officer! Get away from the girl! Get away! I'm gonna you too!
He's getting his butt whooped, and he employs an unauthorized chokehold maneuver, as Alonzo points out later. And Hoyt says, yeah, but I was getting my butt kicked. And Alonzo says, you did what you had to do. Which is, again, this is Alonzo pushing Hoyt. He's like, you're already breaking procedure in moments like this. I'm just asking you to go a little farther.
Totally agree.
At the end of that scene, Jake picks up a Hello Kitty wallet that's lying next to the dumpster. And this becomes very important later.
Yeah. Can I tag one thing onto that test?
Yeah.
So, like you said, that was a crack that Alonzo could exploit. Like, hey, you did the chokehold. But I also thought the other test is that Alonzo says, you want to stay, arrest them? Cool, go ahead. And then he walks to the car. And there's that moment where Jake's trying to decide, am I going to arrest these guys or am I going to go with Alonzo? And I don't know if you call that a pass or a fail, because he's passing Alonzo's test, but he's failing his own police integrity test.
Well, but he's also, like Alonzo says in the next scene, we can't waste our time with these small-time arrests. We arrest the big guys.
Right, you're right.
In one way, this is the Hoyt trying to transition from a patrol officer who absolutely would book those two guys,
right,
into a narcotics detective.
Yeah. And Alonzo butters him up after that, like, hey, what you did out there was really amazing, right?
Yeah, he does. He says, no matter what I say, you did the right thing. The next test, Snoop.
What you need, homie?
Crack. $20. What?
Crack?
Yeah.
Smell like bacon in this mother. What, I look like a sucker to you, nigga? You rookie?
Hoyt has to chase him down and get information out of him. I thought that was a pretty great performance by Mr. Calvin Brodus there. And all of this stuff, we don't know it yet, but all of these scenes are on a checklist that Alonzo has. And when that is revealed, it was a mind-blown moment for me. I've never seen this movie before.
Oh, wait, you'd never seen Training Day?
Right.
Oh, wow! That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So what they get out of Snoop is information on a guy called Sandman.
Right.
And that's the next test, is getting into Crips territory. So they're in dangerous territory here, and they visit Sandman's house. He's in jail, though, and Macy Gray plays his wife.
Yes.
And Hoyt is tasked with controlling Macy Gray and her 10-year-old nephew. She knows a lot more than Hoyt does about this type of situation.
I want to see the warrant. You supposed to give me a copy.
Yeah, well, my partner has it. He'll be out within a sec.
Where the f***'s your backup?
Ma'am, do me a favor and just be quiet until we're through with our investigation.
Well, you got the gun, don't you, boss?
That's right, I do.
Punk-ass, bitch-ass, crooked-ass cop.
Okay,
You a rookie.
give me a break, okay?
She knows something's wrong.
Yeah.
As Alonzo is tossing the house, but he's looking for something other than what he says he's looking for. And we learn what that is later. That is a test that I felt it was sort of a middling pass.
Yeah.
It was a challenge for him, but he did get through it.
Yeah.
And then I thought I saw that as the last test. The when they're leaving, they give Macy Gray the quote unquote warrant, and it's a a menu that was on the
takeout menu,
the window of the car,
which again is planted in the beginning, like every little thing in this movie is a payoff. So great,
right? And she starts hollering about give me my money and you're not cops, and oh boy, the whole street just erupts in gunfire, and Denzel pulls out his twin 45s and starts firing. This is just what are you doing? This is a crazy, like Hoyt says, that was not okay. You don't just open fire on a busy residential street.
After tests comes approach to the inmost cave. Our hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden. So after nabbing the cash from Sandman's house, Alonzo takes Hoyt to an extremely dangerous gang neighborhood called the Jungle. I mean, it's literally called the Jungle. If only it were called the inmost cave, then it would be actually more literal. And he says to Hoyt in a moment of foreshadowing and warning, which is part of the approach, don't ever come down here without me for your safety.
Right.
There are some elements of the approach here that are, I think, kind of underused in film, which I really enjoyed. Sometimes we get to see the hero rest and refuel before the big conflict. So Alonzo takes Hoyt to visit his mistress, played by Eva Mendes. It's really great, her performance. Alonzo gets to rest and refuel by taking her into the bedroom, and Hoyt gets to refuel, right, by getting some homemade El Salvadorian food. He bonds with Alonzo's son briefly, and then takes a little nappy poo, which he needs because he's been smoking PCP and drinking beer and whiskey all day. Man. Right. And then after he kind of falls asleep, passes out, there's the time-lapse shot of the sun going down over a spiked fence. And this is a great symmetry to the sun going up in the valley. Now it's going down behind a spiked fence. This is the sun setting in the special world. He's in dangerous territory. And then the last part of the approach I saw is that Alonzo goes to a restaurant and he has a meeting with the three wise men. This is almost his mentor moment. And the three wise men are FBI Captain Lou Jacobs, Sangursky, played by Tom Berenger, and then a detective named Doug Rosselli, who is a high-end crimes detective. So Alonzo introduces Hoyt to the three wise men and then sends him to a table to wait. So now Hoyt is just witnessing this scene. He's listening. And this scene serves several functions. One of them that Vogler makes reference to is like a last laugh and a cigarette. And the cigarette would be a glass of presumably expensive wine that Alonzo reaches across the table, grabs a glass and pours himself. And then we hear the peanut butter story. There's no point to that story except to get us to laugh and also to show that Alonzo doesn't know everything. He thinks the judge is a smart lady, but these guys know at least as much as he does. And then another part of the approach is the warning. And these guys warn Alonzo that the Russians are nothing to toy with and that they think he's a dead man. And Alonzo makes an excuse, and this is where we find out he's going to cash in an old account. But Hoyt gets to hear all this, so he starts to get that something's going on, even though they're speaking in code. And then Alonzo drops a belt full of cash into the gray Mercedes, right. And then we find out he's buying an arrest warrant. The final part of the approach, I realize this is a long approach, but another function of the approach is a planning scene, planning for the battle. In this case, they meet on the roof of the parking garage. Alonzo meets his crew, Tim, Mark, and Jeff, and Paul, a.k.a. Dr. Dre, and he gives them their last instructions before the raid.
Here it is, dog. It's all good, legit, signed by the judge, okay? Thanks to the Sandman. Now listen up. Safety is first. He gives us boom, we're giving him lead. Let's do this right so we can all go home and do the wife or the girlfriend thing, all right? Let's suit up, ladies. Time to punch in.
And that's the end of the approach.
So that brings us to the ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear and sometimes actually appearing to die. This film has one of the clearest ordeals, in my opinion, of any that we've covered before, where I didn't even waffle. I saw this scene and I went, that's the ordeal.
Yes.
There was no question in my mind. It is also, I felt, one of the most exciting, riveting ordeals in any film we've covered.
So tense.
This is the raid on Roger's house. It was a surprise to Hoyt when they bust in the back door. They've got to draw down on the suspect, and the suspect turns out to be Roger, this friendly guy who shared his expensive whiskey with them at the beginning of the film, and it turns out he's got a bunch of money underneath his kitchen floorboards.
Yeah.
And wow, when Alonzo hands Hoyt the shotgun and says, shoot him, and the twist of just the revelation when Hoyt realizes everything has been planned.
Yes.
Every stop they've made that day has been calculated, and all of it to set Hoyt up.
Yep.
So now he's either got to play ball or they're going to shoot Roger and then him. And Alonzo, when he mimics the news broadcast.
Yes.
A Los Angeles Police Department narcotics officer was killed today, serving a high-risk warrant in Echo Park. Give me the bitch. LAPD spokesperson said the officer is survived by his wife and infant child. You get the picture?
Yeah, I got the picture.
That is a foreshadowing of what we hear at the very end of the film.
Yes, another symmetry.
Oh, man. Hoyt, he's got no chance. He has no choice in this moment. Well, he does, but it's either die or play along. And holy smoke. This is the moment when Hoyt, at least on the surface, pivots from what he was at the beginning of the film to the kind of officer these other guys are.
Yes. Agreed.
That scene, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Agreed. That's the ordeal. Hands down.
Use your ears and you hear me, Jake. Sometimes we gotta take this shit all away. It's not like we do this every day, all right? It's just the nature of the business. And no one will ever ask you again to pull the trigger if you don't want to, all right? Hey, Mark, where you transferring to?
SIS.
SIS. Detective. You give me 18 months, I give you a career. We make the big seizures, Jake. We make the big arrests. But if you're in my unit, you gotta be in it all the way or not at all. You understand me?
Which brings us to reward. The ultimate boon. Having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. So like you said, here Hoyt is in his impossible situation. Alonzo has a shotgun pointed at him, point blank. But Hoyt gets the drop on him, right? We've seen Hoyt's reflexes in battle when he fights off those rapists, right? So we know he's got moves. But he gets the drop on him and grabs the shotgun, literally seizing the sword. And he turns it on Alonzo. This is the first time we've seen Hoyt absolutely stand up to Alonzo and take a dominant position.
Yeah.
But he can't shoot him because he's, like you said, he's in this impossible situation and the other guys will just throw him under the bus. So he hands the shotgun back to Alonzo. And during this scene, Alonzo tells his guys to stand down, even though they have they've got guns trained on him. They have a plan. We'll shoot him with Roger's gun. We'll say, they've got their asses covered. And this is the moment where it's hard to tell, like, Alonzo is saying, no, Jake's got the magic eye. He's a good man. He's one of us. He's freaking out. He's freaking out because he's never been in this situation before. And part of me wanted to believe that Alonzo was really being the mentor here and really trying to get Jake to cross the line. But by the end of the movie, I'm like, nope. He was never trying to get Jake. Jake was always a patsy. So anyway, so the standoff shuts down and we realize Jake acquired self-realization and he's gotten a hold of some courage he hasn't had before. So he hands the shotgun back and then he sucker punches Paul. Paul's the one who said, no, let's shoot him. And he punches Dr. Dre right in the face. And it's so great. It's such a great moment of like, yeah, he's in it now. He's playing. He's a player. Until now, his ambition to make detective has been in the driver's seat. He's been playing along on that promise, and now he's like, nope, I'm not doing this. Seeing through deception is another element of reward. And here he sees Alonzo's true motivations. He's not in it to save the streets. He's in it for the money. And Alonzo makes one last appeal to Jake. Be my guy, follow my path. But he can see that Jake isn't in. Jake says, no, that was murder and armed robbery. That's the end of Reward and the end of Act 2.
Well, now it is time for Jeff and I to retire to the Vogler Lounge for our themed beverage. As we stated last episode, we are separating the beverage break from the main podcast and adding it as free content on our Patreon page. So head over to patreon.com/heroesjourney and you can listen to this segment for free.
But now we'll take that break and then we'll be back with Act 3.
Act 3 begins with the road back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces that he disturbed when he seized the reward. I originally put this scene as the reward, but thinking on it, it may be one of those segments that shares time-space with the reward and the road back. And that is the scene where Alonzo and Hoyt take what Alonzo says are some, what is there, a blender or some kind of like kitchen electronics to, I think he says it's the family of one of his informants who's in jail. So he takes things to them to try to help them out while the head of the household is in jail. And it turns out that what is really in the boxes isn't a blender and kitchen supplies, it is cash. By the way, this house is in Hillside Tresas territory. And we've got Cliff Curtis as Smiley, we've got Raymond Cruz as Sniper. And these guys are playing poker at their kitchen table as Alonzo says he's going to go in the bathroom and disappears down the hall, and these guys convince Hoyt to play poker with them.
You play cards, cop?
Nah, not really.
Hey, you want a beer once? Something to drink? Have a cold one.
No thanks, I'm good.
Come on, sit down, eh? Play a card game with us. Don't be rude, that's it. You're invited guests. Why don't you sit down and play one hand? There you go.
Don't sweat it, Rudo. We ain't playing for money. Nah, it's just we gotta roll in a second, yeah? Alonzo's taking the Go ahead, take your seat. I'll play one hand.
Hoyt may also be thinking about when Alonzo said, don't turn down offers on the streets or it'll get you killed. Turns out Alonzo has taken off out the back door and
He's
left.
Gone.
Yeah, right, I gotta go. Yo, Alonzo! You see that? Kick back and party, eh? Ain't nothing out there for you. What are you talking about?
Hey, white boy. You asked me, Holmes. But that's just, of course, if you ask. I think Alonzo played you for a fool, let's say.
Big time, Holmes. Hey, where you going? Where you going? Huh? What's your deal?
The money that's in these boxes that Hoyt thought had a blender in it, this is payment to these guys. They have been told by Alonzo to kill Hoyt.
Yep.
Boy, is that a scary scene.
Oh, man.
When these guys drag him to the bathroom, throw him in the tub, the only thing that saves him is when they're going through his pockets to pull out his money before they kill him.
Right.
They pull out the Hello Kitty wallet that belonged to the girl that Hoyt rescued earlier in the film. Right. And it turns out when that girl, if you remember, that girl was saying, my cousins are Hillside Tresas and they're going to kill you, talking to the junkies that tried to rape her.
Yeah.
That's where Hoyt is right now. He is in that cousin's house.
Yeah.
And the only reason they don't kill him is because he rescued Smiley's cousin. I originally saw that gift of life as a reward.
Interesting.
As a reward for not surviving the ordeal, but for doing the right thing earlier in the film, even though Alonzo said we don't waste our time with small-time crime like that.
Yeah.
So the Hillside Tresas do not kill Hoyt in this moment because of what he did earlier.
Interesting. I'll buy that.
But I also see it as vengeful forces. I think Alonzo planned to have Hoyt murdered by these guys all along.
Yep.
So this is not a response from Alonzo to, okay, Hoyt stood up to me, and I don't think he's going to play ball permanently, so I've got to have him killed now. This is part of the plan all along.
I agree, but there's only one moment that plants a seed of doubt. And you could argue against this, and I won't disagree because there's other reasons why this could have happened. But when they get out of Roger's house, Alonzo gets in the car and you hear him making a phone call. And he says, yeah, just make sure that bathtub's clean. So that could have been that he set it up and he said, wait for my call. And based on what Jake did, he made the call. I think he had it set up all along, but that one phone call puts a little bit of doubt in here. That he could have said, hey, I'm planning this. If you get my call, get ready. Because he says, get that bathtub clean. So I don't know, man. It could be...
I think you're right. I think he planned that if it turns out Hoyt is my kind of guy, then we just continue on with the day. But if I feel that he's going to be a problem, then I'll play this card. But no pun intended.
I thought about this a lot because if Jake had gone along with it, there would be no reason to kill him because the whole crew would have dirt on him, like Alonzo said, and he would have crossed the line into being a narc. And so that led me to go, well, maybe Alonzo is trying to train this guy and prep him, because if Jake had gone along with it, his plan would have worked. He just had a backup. So I like it that we're not sure, that Denzel could have been really trying to prep him, but he had a B plan in case it went sideways. Because Jake is the innocent one. He's the new guy. All the crew would have said, yeah, man, it was a good shooting. Like, it was him or Roger.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay, good. Interesting. You're agreeing with me. Interesting. That's a reference to last episode for those of you that missed Extraction.
Continuing the road back, and this is the point I thought was I had originally put as the road back, is that after Hoyt leaves Smiley's house, they have told him what happened with Alonzo and the Russians.
Yes.
That's why Alonzo is making this play to get all this money. All this stuff is being revealed. It's so great. I really enjoyed this script.
Yeah.
But Hoyt, with this information, knowing that Alonzo sent him there to be killed by these guys, he is sitting on the bus playing with his gun.
Yes.
Terrible trigger discipline, by the way. His finger is on the trigger of his pistol while he's sitting on the bus. He becomes the vengeful force now. When he goes to the jungle alone, Alonzo, remember, said, don't ever come here without my protection. He goes to the jungle by himself, searching for Alonzo, and they let him in.
You got business here, rookie? I'm here for Alonzo.
This particular group of gang members have pivoted, they have shape-shifted to an ally, and they assist Hoyt in this scene. Hoyt then confronts Alonzo, and there's a big shootout and a chase outside, and Alonzo gets the better of him. You're frowning at me.
Well, I think you're bleeding into Resurrection, but I want to hear what you have to say about the rest of the road back.
I'm ending now, though, saying that Alonzo beats up Hoyt and knocks him out, which ends that scene. He doesn't kill him. Alonzo leaving Hoyt alive, that was a surprise to me because he just tried to have him killed, but Alonzo tries to leave at that point. And that was what I saw as the end of the road back.
Dan, when we first started this podcast, you and I struggled to delineate Ordeal versus Resurrection. Both stages involve a big conflict, and they both involve the hero facing death and rebirth. And our original, the definition of resurrection that we've been going with so far in this podcast is that the hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living a changed person. Well, I dived back into Vogler and Campbell after you and I discussed last episode how similar the definitions of those two stages are. And I'd like to propose that we rewrite our intro to this section. Here's what I suggest. The hero faces death one more time in an ordeal, battle, or showdown. This time, the danger is on the broadest scale of the entire story.
Sure.
I'm going to back up a little bit from where you left off. Hoyt enters the jungle, and with the help of Alonzo's son, he gets the drop on Alonzo and enters the apartment without keying him off. And this is the beginning of their showdown. They exchange fire in the apartment. They head out onto the rooftop. They go from guns to fists, and Alonzo knocks Hoyt down and beats him until he's lying still. Now, we know he's not dead, but we think he's out of action. Alonzo goes down the stairs, gets into his car, he's starting the car. And that's when Hoyt, out of nowhere, drops from above and lands on the windshield. To me, that was resurrection. That was the hero appearing to die and coming back to life. Alonzo is trying to get away, but Hoyt's holding onto the car and they're swerving, and Alonzo's trying to shoot him out the front of the car, and they crash. Man, Hoyt he's been through a lot, but he is somehow still able to get up on his feet and get Alonzo out of the car and holding him at gunpoint. Alonzo earlier referred to the jungle. This is the heart of the jungle, so he's literally in the heart of darkness here. And like you mentioned at the very beginning of Tests, Allies, and Enemies, that the gang members are shapeshifters. Because here they see that Hoyt has dominated Alonzo. Alonzo says,
"Hey, first dime who puts one in his head, I'll make you a rich man. Come on now. We want to get paid."
And Bone sets down a gun and says, "You got it twisted, man. You got to do your own work." And that's when Alonzo says, "All right, you can't shoot me," grabs the cigarette. In this moment, you think he's reaching for the gun, but he gets the cigarettes instead. And finally, he says, "You're not going to shoot me in the back." That, you know what, they put you in the gas chamber for that. He grabs the gun, and Hoyt shoots him in the ass.
You mother...
Next one will kill you.
Oh, son of a bitch. You shot me in the ass.
And Alonzo, I think, is as much surprised as he is enraged.
Yeah.
So Hoyt has earned the respect of the gang members, and Bone says,
"Jake, go ahead and bounce on me. Get up out of here. We got your back."
So Jake is able to get away. By the way, I just have to mention that Terry Crews is one of the gang members. And it took me right out of the movie because I think of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and how goofy he is, but he's such a heavy.
He's just huge. Yeah, he's just a big dude.
Yeah, he doesn't do the thing where he makes his pecs flex independently, though, which disappointed me deeply. So Alonzo gets in his car and drives away, but a black van and a black SUV drive up and block him in, and it's the Russians, and they open fire, and they absolutely riddle him with bullets. It's a fantastic death scene. And he gets out of the car after he's been shot, and he's holding his keys. Was he trying to make it to the trunk to unlock the trunk to get guns? I didn't quite get what that was about, but it's an incredible death scene. And of course, being purified by death is part of the resurrection, and Jake is purified by Alonzo's death.
Yeah. I think if Alonzo had been left alive, Hoyt would have to worry about Alonzo coming after him.
Yeah.
Which segues nicely to Freedom to Live. Or the return with the elixir, the hero returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. So Jake returns home as we hear a news report over the radio that mimics the exact language that Alonzo used in Roger's house, trying to convince Hoyt to play along.
A Los Angeles Police Department narcotics officer was killed today, serving a high-risk warrant near LAX. An LAPD spokesperson said Officer Alonzo Harris was survived by his wife and 4 sons.
By medical personnel, a highly decorated officer and 13-year LAPD veteran.
And so because of Alonzo's death, Jake has won. He is free to pursue or not pursue his career. I don't know if he's gonna continue or not. He's got 4 other guys now, though, that are gonna be a problem. Alonzo's officers, or 5, I guess, right? He says he supervises 5 officers. And these guys are probably gonna make some trouble for Hoyt.
Yes.
But it ends, I felt it ended a little abruptly,
yes.
Honestly. It was, he walks into his house and then cut to black. I was like, okay, we're done now.
Yeah, there's a lot to me unresolved.
Yeah, exactly.
They're still going to investigate that officer-involved shooting. They're still going to test his blood and find out he had alcohol and PCP.
Yeah.
I think his police career might be over.
Right.
And maybe that's fine, because if this is what it takes to make detective, then he's not cut out for it. I don't know, but I felt like there was a lot. His story is not resolved. Alonzo's story is resolved.
Yeah, apparently there is an early version of the script where Alonzo lives, and Denzel requested that he receive his comeuppance.
Yeah.
And that is the end of the film. I really enjoyed it. I don't know why I went 19 years without seeing it.
This film came out almost exactly a month after 9/11 happened. And
yep,
I remember you being deeply affected by that. And I wonder if that's not part of the reason why it just got wiped from your memory.
All right, that concludes this journey. Jeff, do you feel trained?
I have been trained by the day.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, review us, and tell your friends about us.
Special thanks to our demigod patrons, Scott Sanford, John Peterson Jr., Jeff Scott, Both Boys React, Chris Bodeker, Joseph Wilbur, and Michelle Calderon. Thank you guys so much for your ongoing support.
If you have a different take on Training Day, or you want to make a comment, please go to heroesjourneypodcast.com and leave a comment on this episode's page. We would love to hear from our listeners.
You can also tweet us at Heroes Podcast and follow us on Instagram at Heroes Journey Podcast. And if you follow us on social media, you'll be seeing some interesting new bonus content from us as we recap little moments of the hero's journey from each episode. So check that out on our social media. If you're a YouTube person and you don't want to download the podcast, you can listen to it on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify.
The Hero's Journey is produced by Jeff Garvin and Dan Zarzana. We would like to thank Taylor Jordan for composing the Hero's Journey theme. Thank you also to Dean Ethington for designing the logo. And I want to give a special shout out to Jason Dorff, who's been doing some new artwork for the podcast. Check out the Extraction episode. I think he did great work with Extraction, The Shining. You can check out his work at jasondorff.weebly.com.
Training Day is copyright 2001 Warner Brothers.
Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
journey on.
You never know. That's the point.